My name is Douglas Berger, and this is Glass City Humanist. I spend each episode talking about humanist values and how to apply them in our lives. I will also share news and information of interest to humanists and other free thinkers. In this episode, Richard Dawkins is a well-known figure in the free thought community. His books have been bestsellers and have helped lead many people to ditch religion. In recent years, Dawkins has not been a decent human being, and on April the 10th, a transphobic tweet reminded us all we need to stop putting science communicators on a pedestal. The support Dawkins received for just asking questions reminds us what humanism really means as we reject his questioning of the basic dignity and worth of a group of people for no rational reason. Glass City Humanist is an outreach project of the secular humanists of Western Lake Erie, building community through compassion and reason for a better tomorrow. If you live in the greater Toledo, Ohio area and are looking for a humanist community, then please check us out. You can reach our group at humanistwle.org or from a link on the podcast website, glasscityhumanist.show. A lot of times I have problems coming up with topics to talk about on this podcast. Especially if I can't get anybody to interview, then it's usually just me talking about a topic. I thought I had a good topic to talk about today in this episode about a recent tweet by the science communicator and biologist Richard Dawkins that called into question, at least on the surface, the basic humanity of trans people. And this is a big thing, I guess, in Britain, in the UK, because we also had the issues with author J.K. Rowling also questioning the basic humanity of trans, especially trans women. And so now we have Richard Dawkins also saying it. And I kind of before I start talking about it, I kind of want to quote from it and explain it just a little bit in case you've been under a rock and haven't been paying any attention. This tweet took place on April the 10th, and it starts out, it says, in 2015, Rachel Dolezal, a white chapter president of NAACP, was vilified for identifying as black. Some men choose to identify as women, and some women choose to identify as men. You will be vilified if you deny that they literally are what they identify as. Discuss. Now, on the surface, you have to go under the surface. You have to read between the lines to figure this out, to understand what he's saying. And Hemant Mehta at Friendly Atheist kind of gives a general interpretation of this tweet. And he writes, in case you need help translating that, in 2015, Dolezal became the subject of controversy when it became public knowledge that her parents were both white. That alone wouldn't be an issue, except that until that point, she had flat out lied in public about having a black parent. She passed herself off on paper as black. She already benefited from the privilege of being white, but decided it wasn't enough. When confronted about it, she said she self-identified as black, and it's that comment that has made her infamous. She wasn't simply vilified for identifying as black, whatever that means, so much as lying about it to gain some kind of edge in her professional career. Trans people, on the other hand, aren't changing genders just for the hell of it. They sure aren't doing it because it gives them some kind of advantage in society. More to the point, they don't choose to identify as the other gender as if it's some kind of light switch. They are the other gender. If they undergo surgery or take hormones or request a change on their driver's license, it's to correct a mistake, not because they wanted to be another gender on a whim. And that was from an essay by Hemant Mehta at the Friendly Atheist blog. And that's the problem with this tweet, with Richard Dawkins' tweet. He is equating some woman who was not born black, but who co-opted the black heritage in order to gain a commercial advantage in her personal life. So he's comparing her to a trans woman or a trans man who become the gender that they identify with because it's part of their whole being. It's part of their firmament. They just feel it. They aren't choosing it as Hemet says, just for the hell of it. They are women. They are men, and they are correcting a mistake by identifying as a man or a woman. So that's the problem with Richard Dawkins' tweet. Then he adds on to it with discuss. Now, first of all, Twitter is a poor platform to have any kind of nuanced academic discussion of anything. It just isn't. It's 240 characters, hashtags. You can do multiple tweets in some, especially if your app supports it. But still, if you're trying to discuss, let's say, the causes of World War I, you wouldn't want to do that on Twitter. You definitely don't want to have this discussion that he's attempting to have on Twitter. Because basically he's calling into question the basic humanity of trans people by inferring that they are doing it for as the kids say, the lulz. And that's not the case. And then he talks about that you will be vilified if you deny they are literally what they identify as. Well, if you deny a trans person their identity that they have claimed, yes, you should be vilified because you're being an asshole. Pardon my French. If you meet somebody, if you meet a trans woman and you happen to know that they were born a man and you refer to her as him, or in some cases, even some people even call them by what they call their dead name, what their name was when they were the previous gender, then you are being an asshole. Now, does that mean that you're anti-trans or that you're transphobic? Pretty much you are. If you don't understand why saying what you're saying is wrong, then you are that. So basically, I was going to spend my time with you today discussing his tweet and why it's wrong. But instead, I'm going to shift a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the reactions to his tweet. What happened behind the scenes. The big thing that happened was that the American Humanist Association, which my group, the Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie, is a chapter of, withdrew their 1996 Humanist of the Year award that they had given to Richard Dawkins. And that actually made news for some reason. It made news that they had done this and appeared in several international newspapers and news sites. And they released a statement, and I kind of want to quote from it, their reasoning for withdrawing the award. And the American Humanist Association wrote, "Regrettably, Richard Dawkins has, over the past several years, accumulated a history of making statements that use the guise of scientific discourse to demean marginalized groups, an approach antithetical to humanist values. His latest statement implies that the identities of transgendered individuals are fraudulent, while also simultaneously attacking black identity as one that can be assumed when convenient. His subsequent attempts at clarification are inadequate and convey neither sensitivity nor sincerity." And so that's why they voted, the HA board, which awards the award, voted to take it away. Now, just like we've seen in recent history or recent current events involving removal of Confederate statues, renaming of schools that had been named for Confederate generals. And so there's been some pushback from the actions of the AHA. One was a major donor issued a public statement complaining about their action and announcing that they were going to not donate any more money to the AHA. That's a whole other different issue that I'm not going to get into at this point. And then you had some more of the people like Richard Dawkins who are out in the public, who talk in public, are interviewed, appear on panel shows and podcasts, such as Michael Shermer, Steven Pinker, and some other ones complaining about it. Now, their take on complaining about it, as well as the major donor that basically kissed off the AHA, was that they were succumbing to wokeness, or falling into the wokeism as a pejorative. Okay, for example, Michael Shermer, publisher of Skeptic Magazine, he tweeted out, "How illiberal is the American Humanists Association? These tweets from Richard Dawkins constitute evidence of bigotry so hateful that his AHA Humanist of the Year award was withdrawn. This is beyond illiberalism. It's pure woke insanity and just feeds real bigots who think this is liberalism. No." Peter, author of A Manual of Creating Atheists, he just simply wrote, "Another atheist organization has fallen to wokeness. Wokeness is a universal solvent that corrodes and destroys everything it contacts." Sam Harris, the author of The End of Faith, "Bold move for a struggling organization. When everyone has forgotten you exist, why not remind them of committing suicide? And then finally, David Silverman, who is the disgraced former president of American Atheists, he writes, "Please pretend we are still relevant and that Dawkins still gives a fuck about our impotent mess of an organization. Don't pay attention to the inactivity. Watch the virtue signaling. White man bad. Give us money so we can continue to accomplish zero things for atheism. We are heroes." And then Steven Pinker, as I mentioned before, and Rebecca Goldstein, who were also AHA Humanists of the Year, wrote a letter complaining about it. And I'm just going to read the part that was quoted here. It says, "Dawkins did not call for discrimination against marginalization of any individual or group, and he explicitly denied any intention to disparage anyone or to lend support to transphobic or racist political movements. Now, it would still be completely appropriate for those of you who objected to the substance of his tweets to criticize them in the Humanist or other forums explaining the nature of their objections. But to seek, punish, dishonor, or humiliate a writer rather than engage with his words is a betrayal of humanism." The Humanist Manifesto 3 declares that the life stance of humanism is guided by reason. Since no one is infallible, reason requires that a diverse range of ideas be expressed and debated openly, including ones that some people find unfamiliar or uncomfortable. To demonize a writer rather than address the writer's arguments is a confession that one has no rational response to them. The illiberal response is all the more damaging to an organization that claims to repudiate the repressive practices of religion. It has not been lost on commentators that an association of freethinkers has deemed certain thoughts unthinkable, nor that it is enforcing dogmas and catechisms by excommunicating a heretic. The AHA is turning itself into a laughingstock. So that was some of the critics, the well-known critics, and there was plenty of people who supported the work the AHA did. Our group, the Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie, we issued our own statement complaining about his tweet and also saying that we were no longer going to promote or support any events that Richard Dawkins appears at or participates in. And I did not take that decision lightly. I didn't make it quickly. It's just that Richard Dawkins he's not dumb. He's not stupid. You know, he has a PhD. I'm assuming he has a PhD. And he's college educated. He's written several books about evolution. And he's and this has not been the first time he's been in trouble for things that he tweets on Twitter. So he knows the buttons to push. So you have to ask yourself, was he just pushing buttons? And kind of like a comment by David Silverman that says, please pretend we are still relevant and that Dawkins still gives a f about our impotent mess of an organization. How about the other part that Dawkins is doing this because he has a book to sell? Or maybe he needs the money, so he needs to drum up some advertising, some bad PR. Always works good for him, it seems like. I don't know. I don't know why somebody as smart as Richard Dawkins would do such a thing. I don't have a college degree. I have some college education, and I know not to write what he wrote. It reminded me, I was in student government in college, and we were having some kind of get-together in the lobby, and was I president? No, I wasn't president, but I was going to give an introduction for something. And so the people that were there were people you would find in a dormitory at a college campus. It was mixed, men, women, white, blacks, Asian, all kinds of different people. And I'm doing my introduction or whatever it is I'm saying, and I get to this one part and I say, you people. And you just heard this gasp around the room when I said, you people. Now, where I'm from, in Northwest Ohio, you people maybe isn't common. It might have been common when I was a kid. It was just something you said. It was a rhetorical device. Like how down in some of the southern parts of the country, they say you all. The only thing I could come up with at the time. However, some segment of the population, when they hear you people, they get upset because it's like you're calling out a particular segment, and it's usually has racist undertones. I did not know that. They educated me. I no longer say you people because I know that a segment of the population isn't going to appreciate that rhetorical device. I learned not to say that. I learned to say other words that mean the same thing, but not in that particular order. And that's what you do. Again, it's 2021. If you do not know not to use the N-word, if you're white and you don't know not to use the N-word in public conversations, then something's wrong with you. You may need to be checked out. You may have a brain tumor, or maybe you were in a coma for 30 years and you just woke up. Because if you're white and you pay attention to this and you care about other people, you know not to use the N-word. So the whole thing, these critics of the AHA's decision talking about that Dawkins was just trying to discuss things, it's bullcrap. Just utter bullcrap. And so I wanted to share something here. I had a whole spiel planned that I was going to mention and talk about. And come to find out that my friend, James Croft, who is the senior leader at the Ethical Society of St. Louis, he writes on the Substack.com website. He does essays about humanism and ethical culture. He did a much better job of expressing what I want to express, and I agree with his take on this issue. The title of his essay is Ditching Dawkins, and the link to it will be in the show notes. And I hope he doesn't dislike me quoting significantly from this, but it's just, I would read the whole thing. I'm not going to do that, but I would just read the whole thing right now because I think it's an excellent essay that is a counter argument to stuff that Pinker and Boghossian and Shermer and Silverman all talk about, and including Richard Dawkins when they're talking about this stuff. Okay, so in James Croft's essay, he writes, all these commentators, none of them trans, of course, are making roughly the same argument. That the AHA's decision to rescind its award to Dawkins is evidence that organized humanism has compromised one of its most cherished values, freedom of thought, speech, and discourse, in favor of a dogmatic and closed-minded commitment to a narrow set of opinions currently championed by leftist woke scolds. Dawkins is being censored, silenced, and canceled for daring to ask questions about a controversial topic, which should legitimately be part of public discourse. They all draw attention to what they see as an ironic similarity between the decision of the AHA and the actions of fundamentalist religious groups which have long been the target of humanist criticism. This argument is, from top to bottom, complete and abject nonsense. First, as all these commentators know, Dawkins has not lost one jot of his freedom to think or speak because of the AHA decision. Their decision to revoke the award is an exercise of their own freedom of association and an attempt to maintain their institutional and philosophical integrity, actions perfectly in line with participation in a liberal society. It in no way prevents Dawkins from saying whatever he pleases. He has been active on Twitter since the most recent offending tweet, touting his newly released audiobook. His appearances on prominent podcasts, he has not been silenced or excommunicated from anything. Second, the AHA's decision is not even an attempt to prevent Dawkins from airing his views. It is an expression of their own disagreement with them, something which is well within their rights as an autonomous organization. Any nonprofit organization like the AHA has the absolute right to withdraw whatever awards they please if they feel that continued association with the awardee is no longer in line with their values. This is, of course, precisely what the AHA said in their own statement, that Dawkins' repeated interventions in ethically sensitive matters are not consistent with their commitment to human dignity, and particularly that of trans people. Third, it is generally incredible that these commentators should take at face value Dawkins' claim that he is merely wanting to raise an intellectually and culturally important question in a disinterested manner. This is what I most object to in these critics' approach to this issue. To take them at their word, we must believe that they think, while lauding his contributions to science and free thought, that Richard Dawkins is fantastically stupid. That he simply doesn't have the capacity to understand how his words might be construed in the current political context and is unable to frame his ideas more carefully. But Dawkins is not stupid. As the AHA said in their own statement, he has made significant contributions to science and science education, and is one of the world's leading public intellectuals. He is perfectly capable of understanding the sort of signal he was sending with his question. He is signaling to those who share his obvious skepticism about the reality of trans identity that he is on their side, while maintaining a shred of deniability when the inevitable criticism comes. Online, we call this jacking off, Jaqing off, just asking questions, when the questions are in fact thinly veiled statements. And then I wanted to share just a little bit more of this, and I do apologize to James Croft. You should go and read the whole essay, please. But I just kind of wanted to read this part because I totally 100% agree, 99% agree with the following paragraph. But what about the argument that contemporary humanism is becoming a cult with its own unquestionable dogmas? Is the board of the AHA donning robes and preparing the thumbscrews? Of course not. In fact, steps like this show that organized humanism is becoming more humanistic. Humanism means more than a commitment to skepticism and free thought, and more than not believing in God. And the more I do humanism, the less I think that even matters. It means working to promote the dignity and worth of all people, fighting for the oppressed and the marginalized, working together for a more just world, and striving to bring out the best in ourselves and others. Humanist organizations should seek to uphold these positive values at all times, and in disassociating themselves with the increasingly cringeworthy behavior of Richard Dawkins, the American Humanist Association showed a commitment to them. Of course, free thought, skepticism, and intellectual debate are central to the Humanist project. We should be vigilant against any tendency towards groupthink and cultedness, but for too many years, organized humanism has focused on free thought and skepticism to the detriment of the broader panoply of values the tradition should uphold. So I just wanted to highlight that. Humanism is about promoting the dignity and worth of all people. So if you, for a moment, entertain this idea that you need to discuss the basic worth and dignity of a trans person, then you basically are human garbage. You are not some kind of skeptic, free-thinking skeptic who is cool about bringing up uncomfortable topics. You are human garbage. You do not deserve to have a platform. You do not deserve to have an award. And people complain, well, that's the cancel culture. Well, that doesn't exist because, like James and Hammett both point out in their essays, that Richard Dawkins is going to be fine. He's going to continue to write his books. He's going to continue to be interviewed, be on podcasts, panel discussions. He's going to be invited to conferences. He's probably going to be invited to more anti-social justice conferences now because, basically people, the human garbage segment of the population tend to take care of their own. And so he's going to be fine. He hasn't been canceled. He hasn't been censored. All that happened was an award that was given to him in 1996 was taken back. That's it. And again, if you think that we should be having discussions about the basic dignity basic dignity and worth of people, I don't want to be associated with you. I don't want you in my group. I don't want you in humanism. You can go off and hang out with the Trumps of the world, the people that want to crap on other people simply because they're not like you. Feel free. It's not making you cool. It's not making you hip and a nonconformist and a skeptic. No, you're just an asshole. And I'm really happy that AHA took this stance. And like I said, I agree with James that that humanism is more than just a disbelief in God or a belief in skepticism and free thought and separation of church and state. It's much, much more. That's why I'm a humanist instead of just an atheist, because I want to address social justice issues in this world. And people like Richard Dawkins makes that much, much harder. Not to mention the people that could make these organizations great have been driven off by people like Richard Dawkins, because some people just don't want to be in that toxic environment with people like him and Sam Harris and Michael Shermer. Gee, that sounds familiar. Where'd those names come from? The people that set up these toxic environment drive off the good people and makes it a lot harder for these organizations to do good work. And that's what I'm disappointed at. So, I know I've taken a long time expressing myself here today, and I appreciate you joining me. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Glass City Humanist. For further information, notes, and links used in the show, check out the episode page at glasscityhumanist.show. The show is written and produced by Douglas Berger, and he is entirely responsible for the content. Comments and complaints can be left on the website or sent by email to listenercomments@glasscityhumanist.show. We are sponsored in part by the Secular Humanists of Western Lake Erie, and they can be reached at humanistwle.org. The theme music used on Glass City Humanist is Your Call by Kevin MacLeod from filmmusic.io and is licensed through creativecommons.org as Attribution 4.0 International. See you next time.